The Gold Card training program for telehandler operators has been developed by the Telescopic Handler Association of Australia, together with major industry partners. This information is provided to offer guidance and duty of care training on the safety aspects of operating telehandlers in combination with different types of attachments. A telescopic handler, or telehandler, is a versatile type of mobile plant incorporating a telescopic boom fitted with a lifting or carrying attachment. The most common means of lifting is by forks, but telehandlers can be fitted with a variety of attachments for different types of loads, such as crane jibs and buckets. A telehandler is able to pick, carry, and place loads at various lift heights. There are several types of telehandlers in use, and these can be divided into the following groups: slewing and non-slewing, and some which are fitted with stabilisers and/or hydraulic frame levelling. A telehandler has 4 wheels, pneumatic tyres, and a similar steering wheel and pedal arrangement to a car. However, a telehandler only carries the operator and materials and is not designed to carry passengers. All telehandlers have specific decals that show the limitations of the machines and key safety information. Make sure you understand these decals before you operate the telehandler. Although the forklift attachment combination is most commonly used, there are many other manufacturer-approved attachments available for use. Approved attachments should also have a clearly identifiable load chart in the cabin, so you can work out what you can lift, to what height, and at what boom length. A load computer may also be fitted, which readily shows information on a screen, such as boom height, boom angle, boom length, the centre of gravity inside the stability triangle, load weight, and remaining lift capacity. Unapproved attachments must not be used under any circumstances and may pose a serious safety hazard. Carry out a risk assessment before you operate the telehandler. Walk around and inspect the surface and area where you'll be operating. Hazards need to be identified and controlled in line with your worksite procedures. Assess the ability of the telehandler to perform the task required based on the ground conditions and around any other obstacles, other plant and machines, and other workers on site. Common hazards when operating telehandlers include holes, excavations, drop-offs and culverts, deep mud or soft soil, slippery or sloping surfaces, other structures, and puddles. Unless you are certain that the depth of water does not exceed a safe operating level, do not attempt to drive through a body of water. Be careful when driving through timbered areas. Consider the extension of the load, the forks, boom, and other parts of the telehandler. Power lines are a potentially lethal hazard, so always check the area before you start work. The recommended safe clearance distances are 6.4 metres from distribution lines and 10 metres from transmission lines, even if tiger tails are present. Tiger tails are a visual warning only and do not provide insulation protection. Safe clearance distances can vary from state to state, so check your local regulations. In addition to power lines, there may be exposed or hidden gas and water services that can cause damage or injuries through contact. Make sure you know the location of all services before you start work. Telehandlers are powered by combustion engines. The exhaust fumes can be dangerous to others and yourself if in a confined space or poorly ventilated area. Before you start operating the telehandler, a pre-start inspection needs to be done. Walk around the machine and check that the windows, screens and mirrors are clean. The attachment is securely fitted and structurally sound, and the ID plate present and readable. The tyres are in good condition, correctly inflated, the hubs aren't leaking oil, and the wheel nuts are not loose. The engine compartment and radiator is free of debris or flammable materials. Oil, fuel, water and hydraulic levels are correct and all caps secured. The boom angle indicator works properly and structural welds on the boom and chassis are not cracking. The next step is to check the cabin, fitted with a rollover protection structure known as ROPS, and the falling objects protection structure known as FOPS is structurally sound with no cracks. This protective structure is your main defence in a rollover or a dropped load situation. Refer to the operator's manual if there are any controls you're not familiar with, as they can vary from machine brands and models. Sit in the operator's seat, adjust for comfortable operation, fasten the safety belt securely around you, and check rear vision mirror adjustment. Make sure a load chart for the attachment you're using is present. Position all controls in neutral. Be sure the handbrake is on. You can sound the horn to warn others in the area before you start the telehandler. The next step is to check all the controls are working correctly. Start the engine according to procedures in the operator's manual, and then check that all switches, lights, horns and alarms are correctly working. Then test all controls. Telescopic boom extension, extend and retract. Telescopic boom elevation, raise and lower. Frame levelling if equipped. Wheel brakes, parking brake, steering, all modes left and right, fork and or carriage tilt. Stabilisers if equipped. Check the load moment indicator or LMI and check the load computer if fitted. There must be a logbook kept in the pouch in the cabin of the telehandler. The logbook is used to record the results of your daily pre-operational check, to report any faults or damage, and to record repairs, servicing and maintenance carried out at specified intervals. Always check notified faults have been signed off as repaired, and that the logbook and servicing on the machine are up to date, and the logbook is stored in the cabin for immediate access. If a malfunction or abnormal condition is identified, park and tag out the machine. Note the fault in the logbook for repair and advise the machine owner. Telehandlers have 3 steering modes that are used for a variety of site conditions. Front-wheel steering, used when driving on public roads. All-wheel steering, giving tight circling ability in confined spaces. Crab steering, for moving on an angle in tight spots. To change between modes, stop the machine. Put the gear lever in neutral. Make sure the wheels are pointing straight ahead, then use the mode change switch or lever. Check the new mode has engaged by turning the steering wheel slightly and looking at the wheels. Spatial and visual awareness is paramount when operating, and not being able to see people or things around you is one of the leading causes of accidents. Typical line-of-sight obstructions include raised boom position, travelling in reverse, a load too high to see around, or buildings that obscure views of intersections. Remember, other sight noises may prevent you from hearing any horn or warning device. In a confined area, for example a narrow aisle or between narrowly spaced buildings, remember to ensure that the load does not exceed the width of the space available. Watch for low doorways. Watch for pedestrians. And that there is adequate lighting and ventilation. Exercise caution whenever entering or leaving a building, especially on bright sunny days. Allow time for your eyes to adjust. Always use your horn. Slow down and be prepared to stop. Your travelling speed is determined by ground and site conditions. If you have a load on the attachment, travelling at walking speed is recommended. If the materials you need to lift have no weight identified, you must consult with the supplier or a competent person who can provide the correct weight before attempting to lift it. After assessing the load and determining it is safely secured to move, position the load on the telehandler forks so that the load is horizontally centered across the forks. Keep the load or the forks as low as practical when driving. Cradle the load by tilting the forks back. Accelerate turn and brake gently so the load doesn't shift or fall off. Tall loads may be unstable in turns. Transporting wide loads may lead to problems when a turn is attempted in narrow passageways such as storage racks, between sheds or warehouses, or when travelling in heavily timbered or brushy areas. Be aware of the steering mode you are using. To maintain maximum stability, the boom and load should be retracted and close to the ground when travelling and turning. Driving a telehandler with the forks raised or extended can cause the machine to become unstable. It also increases the possibility of contacting power lines. Driving on slopes can be dangerous. There is a much greater risk of tip over or load loss. Follow these procedures for maximum safety. Avoid excessively steep slopes. Keep the load low and proceed with caution. The load should always be facing uphill so it doesn't slide off. Travel in reverse if going down a slope with a load on. Avoid turning on a slope and use a low gear to descend. This allows compression braking by the engine, helping you control the speed of the telehandler. Never shift gears to neutral when going downhill. In the event the telehandler rolls or tips, you must remain in your seat, hold on firmly, and lean away from the point of impact. Telehandlers are usually transported between sites by float. However, some jobs may require you to operate the telehandler on public roads. Before driving on a public road, check the telehandler has a current conditional registration plate and that you have the correct class of license. This may vary depending on which state or territory you're in. Telehandlers cannot travel at a normal road speed and may require the use of a pilot vehicle to improve safety for both the operator and other drivers. You will also need to secure any attachments. Drive in travel mode or road mode, front-wheel drive with boom controls locked out. Obey all road rules and any permit conditions. And be aware of any blind spots that may impair your peripheral vision. Park the telehandler in a safe location. Lower the boom and attachment to the ground, then switch the engine off and remove the key. Then walk around the telehandler and inspect for any damage, which must be entered in the logbook and reported if in need of attention. It is best to be familiar with some of the basic concepts of telehandlers to understand what makes them stable and what to do to avoid a potential rollover or tip over. The base of a telehandler is the two front tyres and a pivot point at the rear axle. The rear wheels are not part of the base because most telehandlers have an oscillating rear axle for travelling over uneven ground. The 3 points comprised of the two front tyres and the rear pivot form a triangle at ground level, commonly known as the stability triangle. As long as the telehandler's centre of gravity, the point around which the machine's weight is equally distributed, remains within this stability triangle, the machine remains stable. The stability triangle is in fact three-dimensional because as the load is lifted vertically, the triangle area of safe operation decreases in size, reducing stability. Adding a load to the forks while the boom is down causes the centre of gravity to move forward and down. But raising a load will cause the centre of gravity to move up and to the rear. Should the centre of gravity move outside the stability triangle, the telehandler will become unstable and will tip over. If the centre of gravity moves beyond the front of the triangle, such as attempting to lift a load in excess of the machine's rating, a forward tip will occur. If the centre of gravity moves outside the triangle to the left or right, such as raising the boom on the side of a hill, a sideways tip will occur. The further the centre of gravity moves towards the rear, the less range it has to move sideways and still remain inside the stability triangle. You should be aware that the machine, with the boom fully raised and fully retracted and with no load, places the machine's centre of gravity at its furthest rearward point of the stability triangle. Manufacturers supply load charts to give the operator certainty in what can or cannot be lifted and to what boom extension. As the centre of gravity is determined by the vertical and horizontal position of the load, the machine could tip without warning once you have moved the centre of gravity outside of the stability triangle. Therefore, to use a load chart for your lift, you must have the telehandler on level ground and have the tyres all inflated to correct pressure. Other factors can be wind speed, ice or poor soil conditions, which combined or on their own could cause an accident to occur. Load charts are designed to allow the operator to lift and place a load by following a chart that has a horizontal or x-axis and a vertical or y-axis. The load centre is always located 600 mm from the backstop of the fork tines, and you should centre the load horizontally on the forks as well. These examples are for pallets or symmetrical loads, and pipes or long loads will require a different calculation. Telehandlers with stabilisers will often have a higher lifting and extension capacity and a bigger stability triangle in the forward direction, where the horizontal distance and the vertical height combine to match your boom extension and lift height. An angle is shown on the boom arm. As the boom is extended, numbers or letters will indicate the amount of extension. For example, this chart shows if we simply extend the boom out horizontally in front of the telehandler, the weight that can be supported reduces dramatically. The weight that can be supported at a 2-metre horizontal extension is 4,000 kilograms, but at 9 metres extension, it reduces to only 1,250 kilograms. The chart shows that if we extend a 4,000 kilogram load straight up with no extension of the boom, we can lift it to 6.27 metres. If we extend the boom out forward, the lifting capacity drops immediately by 25% to 3,000 kilograms. The further the extension out forward at height, the more the reduction of lifting capacity is shown here. To properly use the load chart, the operator must first determine and/or have the following: a manufacturer-approved attachment, the correct load chart or charts, weight of the load being lifted, load placement information, height where the load is to be placed, distance from the front tyres of the telehandler where the load is to be placed. On the load chart, find the line for the height and follow it over to the distance. The number in the load zone where the two cross is the maximum capacity for this lift. If the two cross at a division between zones, the smaller number must be used. The number in the load zone must be equal to or greater than the weight of the load to be lifted. Determine the limits of the load zone on the load chart and keep within these limits. Once you have arrived at the lifting position, assess the lifting location and the destination landing point for any problems. Lifting and placing loads at height is one of the most critical parts of telehandler operation. Moving the forks in and out of pallets at different heights without moving the machine takes practice and a greater understanding of the joystick movements and hydraulic flow of the machine you are operating. Operating the joystick can cause the boom or carriage to respond immediately, or there can be a delay before the boom or carriage moves or stops. This can depend on the brand, model, age or design of the telehandler you are using. It is best to get a feel for how the machine will respond before attempting any lifting or placing of loads, as you often need slow or fine movements to move the forks in or out of the pallet cleanly. Loads need to be lifted as smoothly as possible, and this is best achieved by making the telehandler level and secure in its lifting position using stabilisers or frame levelling. Stabilisers, sometimes called outriggers, are used to keep the machine stable during lifting operations and to increase the lifting capacity of the machine. Bubble gauges and electronic sensors will assist you in creating a level base upon which to lift. Where the ground is uneven, stabilisers ensure the machine is level by lifting the telehandler above the height of the tyres and creating a level base. However, the composition of the surface that the telehandler is operating on can create hazards and needs to be assessed before a lift can occur. Even concrete and solid surfaces have a load capacity they are able to bear, as does the landing position of the load you are lifting. You should also avoid sloping surfaces. The bearing weight capability of the surface you are going to lift off should be verified. A structural or geotechnical engineer may be needed for this. Check the stabilizers before lifting to see if they are sinking. And ensure you have someone who can help you place the load if your visibility is restricted. Packing can be used to place under each stabilizer plate to help maintain a better platform to lift on. It is best to use designed-for-purpose composite pads or suitable hardwood timber pieces. Remember, never pick up or lift a load more than 1 metre above the ground unless the frame is level. Once the machine frame is level and you have raised the load more than 1 metre above the ground, do not move the machine forwards or backwards. Do not use stabilizers to level the telehandler with the load more than 1 metre above the ground, or machine stability could be severely affected. After you have lifted and placed the load, carefully retract the boom, taking care not to snag the load or pallet. Then return it to the carry position and retract any stabilizers or adjust frame leveling before driving the telehandler. To determine if an attachment is approved for use on the specific telehandler you're using, the attachment model option number on the attachment identification plate should be the same as on the load chart located in the operator cab. For fork attachments, the load centre distance should be 600 mm. 500 mm load centre charts do not comply with Australian standards, and hydraulically powered attachments, such as rotators or 4-in-1 buckets, can only be used on machines equipped with auxiliary hose connectors. If any of the above conditions are not met, do not use the attachment. When used in combination with a bucket attachment, a telehandler can be used to scoop, move, spread or level different materials like sand, dirt or gravel. As with fitting any attachment, it is essential to check the bucket for any signs of wear or damage, particularly the blade or teeth. Check for lubrication at grease or pivot points, and make sure hydraulic hoses are connected correctly and not leaking. Lift and move the bucket to check its movements before use, and ensure the correct load chart is present. When using a bucket attachment, you should never overload the bucket, so check the density of different materials you're moving. Check the path to the destination and ensure it is clear and free from obstructions or people. Always use the boom fully retracted when moving into a stockpile to reduce stress and prevent damage to the machine. Backblading can easily cause damage to the machine and bucket attachment over time, due to operators extending too far horizontally and putting too much pressure on the boom and tilt ram. And remember that if you extend the boom while picking up a load, the capacity to lift reduces dramatically. Crane jibs can be fitted to telehandlers to allow lifting and carrying of loads using slings. This is known as a freely suspended load. For this combination of attachments, the telehandler must comply with Australian Standard 1418 Part 19. There should be an ID plate fitted to the telehandler to provide confirmation of this and an appropriate rated load chart. Many older or pre-2008 telehandlers are designed to European Standard EN 1459. These cannot be used to lift freely suspended loads, as the stability testing criteria was different. There are only limited circumstances where a person without a high-risk work licence for dogging, DG, can sling a load. A person with a high-risk work licence, DG class or above, must be used if these circumstances are not met. If you are licensed and dogging the load yourself, then you will need another operator to control the telehandler. You should also consult with your workplace health and safety regulator regarding training and licensing requirements for telehandlers that can lift more than 3 tonnes when being used with a crane jib attachment. The hook should be fitted with a functioning safety latch or device across the mouth of the hook and also be able to swivel freely. This prevents a chain, rope or shackle from twisting and will allow the load to be rotated if required. Check the attachment frame and hook is not bent, cracked or distorted, and all welds appear structurally sound. Your dogman will guide you so that the hook is positioned above the centre of gravity of the load. This will help to keep the load from swinging out of control or slipping from the slings when it is lifted off the ground. Test lifts are carried out to ensure that near-capacity loads do not overload the telehandler, loads of unusual shape or weight distribution are correctly slung, and all lifting equipment is secured and fitted properly. A test lift is done by lifting the load just off the ground or surface using smooth, controlled movements. Don't try to lift the load too fast, as you could break or stretch the slings. If the load shifts to one side, you should be able to identify where the centre of gravity is. Lower the load, then the dogman will re-sling the load, then another test lift can be done. Stability can be severely affected by load swing. To avoid this, keep the load as low to the ground as possible when travelling. Maximum boom angle must be 35 degrees or less. Travel slowly with the load, especially over bumpy ground. Do not travel up, down or across a slope of more than 5 degrees with a freely suspended load, as the centre of gravity can shift suddenly from the load swinging and cause the telehandler to tip over. Monitor the movement of the load at all times. If your view is obstructed or the shape, size or weight of the load will make it difficult to stop it swinging, get your dogman to walk the load with a tag line and to warn you of any hazards in the path of the load. Always follow the directions given by the person dogging the load. If at any point you are unsure of the directions being given to you, stop and confirm the instructions with the dogman. The telehandler is one of the most multifunctional machines available and therefore demands a high level of safety awareness to operate it correctly at all times. You need to constantly assess risks around you and ensure the machine is always used according to the manufacturer's specifications. For more information, contact the Telescopic Handler Association of Australia or visit the website at tsha.com.au.